Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 183. Does alcohol improve your game? Today, we have a number of questions for the Ask Weldon Show, and this is... What was my intro? It's been so long since I did the show, I forgot my intro, everybody. Hello, my name is Weldon, and this is the Ask Weldon Show. I am an esports psychology trainer who deals mostly with... What did I used to say? You guys, I had a pretty fluid thing going, and then this 2-week break. I'm going to blame this on baby brain, everybody. My baby brain has jumped in full force, and I am starting to lose sleep at night. All of these weird symptoms that come along with having a baby, like there's poop randomly on my clothing everywhere I go, and I'm starting to lose sleep, and I can't make eye contact with people when I'm speaking to them because I'm always staring off to the side to make sure the baby doesn't die. And what are some other baby symptoms? Oh yeah, spending an obnoxious amount of time on Facebook sharing videos of a baby laying in place with relatives. And they're just like, the only way they can respond is, oh, that's so nice and cute. But really they're just like, ugh, do you really have to send me 25 clips of like a baby laying on a mattress? Seriously. So anyway, this is the Ask Weldon Show. I am Weldon, and this is the show where you ask me questions about esports psychology, performance, life, and even relationships, or fathering babies, whatever it is you're interested in knowing. The way that you do that is you call in the questions to anchor.fm/Weldon Green. It has it's a little app that does podcasting that allows you to send me an audio message. I play them on the show and I answer them. And I have a master's degree in sport and exercise psychology from the University of Uvascula. I got that trying to improve myself in terms of like my coaching. I was a swim and soccer coach, and I was trying to understand the brain more so that I could do more in terms of child development while I was coaching. And then after I graduated, I noticed that esports was going to be the place where youth development will be happening a lot in the next 10 years, or maybe 10 years from now, going onward. And I thought, this is where the biggest delta is possible, meaning that people here have the worst low end of development and therefore can get the most out of being coached properly. Meaning that if you don't have a coach in League of Legends or CSGO or Call of Duty or Hearthstone or whatever, you're most liable to waste your time and your life doing some... I almost said stupid hobby, but like pointless hobby that you're never going to go pro in because you're never going to make it. And then even worse, you don't get anything beneficial out of it. And even worse, it doesn't even have a corollary effect on your fitness. Like let's say that you were just randomly playing soccer or football, European football, and you sucked at it and you never went pro and you got bullied and you had a crappy coach. At the very, very, very least, you would have gotten slightly more fit out of it, right? You would have been running around, improving your foot coordination, your foot-eye coordination, and just improving your heart health, right? And your longevity. You'd have all these like corollary or tertiary outcomes. Those don't even happen in esports, so it's even worse. So I saw an opportunity to provide a delta here from the sitting in my parents' basement practicing a video game, which I also did, by the way, after I graduated college. Played so much CS 1.6 in my parents' basement that they kicked me out and got my own place. Took me a couple months to get a job. I think from like 3 months straight, I basically just applied for jobs and played CS, Counter-Strike. I'm pretty sure it was Counter-Strike at that time. Yep, it was. So back in 2004. Yeah, and then World of Warcraft came out, and I moved out and I got a job all at the same time. Whew. That was an interesting 5 months of World of Warcraft. All right, anyway, back to the content of the show. So I decided to go into esport. That was in 2012, and I started coaching pro teams in 2015. And I've won 4 championships since then. And here I am, now with my own talk show for you guys. So why don't we jump into the first question of the show? This question is from Patrick, and it is the titular question of the show about alcohol and esport performance.
Hey Weldon, this is Patrick. I was wondering what your thoughts are on the effectiveness of alcohol on training video games. I am a high elo ARAM player with about 3,000 games played, and probably 70% of them were played while drinking. I've been doing it for years and find myself extremely focused when drinking while playing. I dodge more skill shots, land my own, and have more awareness to not engage in a 4v5, etc. I'm not talking about getting extremely drunk and then playing, that usually ends horribly. I'm talking more along the lines of a steady, small intake of alcohol while playing, probably one beer every 45 minutes or so. Do you think that it helps me to get in the zone as I believe it does, or do you think it's a case of liquid confidence? Thanks, Weldon.
All right, this is a very fascinating and interesting question, and I think it highlights how League of Legends is as an esport. Like, what are the skills that are most required for climbing? Let me explain what I mean. It's unequivocally true that alcohol slows your reaction speed. Okay, we know this from laboratory testing that alcohol slows down your reaction speed. I'm tapping my desk so you can't see, but I'll go ahead and tap it up here, like sequentially. Okay, and so what this displays, first of all, is that League of Legends is not necessarily a reaction speed based game. Okay, League of Legends is a decision based game. It's won or lost much more on the quality of your decisions than it is on the speed of your reactions. And so we can see that essentially from the fact that here Patrick is drinking and yet is improving his game. So then the question of whether or not it improves focus is an interesting one, because the answer should be no, basically. Alcohol does not improve focus, it detracts from focus, but we spend most of our time distracted anyway when we're playing League of Legends or any other esport. I would say a lot of the times we are oozing a large portion of our focus out in terms of like things that we don't care about, like your teammates, or you're flipping out over this other thing, or your emotions are dragging you over here, or you're raging about this, or you're stressed about this, or like your brain is just running in every single direction and worrying about the past and worrying about the future. Am I going to win this game? Oh my gosh, it's my second game in the promo, and I can't believe I messed that up. Like I've made 3 mistakes in lane, and my top laner is now looking at me, and now the team fight's coming, and I have to perform well. So our brain is just already oozing focus everywhere. And not very focused. So it's not maybe the worst thing in the world to take a little bit of the top off of your capacity for focus. But then what this does for Patrick, at least, is bring him into homeostasis, where he's not as anxious and he's more chill and he's more able to just shrug off distracting emotions that would pull his focus away and get more fully focused on the game. So as an example, let's say you're at 100%, but you spend 30% of that worrying about nonsensical stuff that has no relevant impact on your game. Well, Patrick here is at 70% capacity because he's slightly inebriated, but he's spending 70% of that on the game, so he's basically in the same place you are, right? So the answer, Patrick, is it's a crutch, and you're using it to get into homeostasis, but it is a tool that is working for you to do that. It is slowing your reaction speed down, but that does not matter because League of Legends is much more based on the quality of your decisions than necessarily the speed of them in the moment. And dodging a skill shot is a decision-making process. You put yourself in a position to do that. It's not necessarily a reaction speed-based one. So there you go. I think that if you wanted to train this, you would basically do it without alcohol and try to maintain the same chill approach in terms of your attitude towards the game that you have with alcohol. Because I think that is the secret sauce that you are getting from the alcohol, is the attitude that you have towards your own mistakes, towards other people's mistakes, etc. I think that it can make you more laid back and less susceptible to tilt. Tilt is simply the choice to allow your emotions to steal away your focus and drive a set of behaviors that is in service of satiating your emotions rather than in service of whatever it is you're trying to do, such as win the game. So thanks for the interesting question, and thanks for sharing your hilarious and awesome experience with how alcohol actually ranks you up. Next question. This one is from Werstef.
mistakes for the rest.
Oops, that was the end of the question.
Hi Weldon, I'm the Challenger ADC again. I took your advice and started playing the game more, and also started the Mac program 2 days ago, which has been really helpful with my mental state during my practice and in life. In the game, I realized I want to master some of my already good abilities, such as CSing in early game, wave management in the mid game, not dying at all in late game teamfights. The problem is I tend to get caught up in the things that don't work in the game, like my mid would lose lane, and I refocus myself to play around that and forget my initial points of practice, like wave management in the mid game. Should I continue to have these separate practice points in different stages of the game, or try to focus on just one thing for the entire game and play the game focused, but without real goal other than not making mistakes for the rest?
All right, thanks for the question, Steph. So the answer is that you should get much better at trading a loss for improvement. So it sounds like what you're distracted by is the fact that your mid lost lane and you're trying to compensate for that in order to win the game, which is a normal impulse. But you have to trade an L for selfish reasons here. So I want you to get to be very comfortable with the idea of losing a game in order to train the skills that you want to train, so that when your mid feeds, you're like, well, my mid fed, I'm still going to train the thing I'm going to train. Like, of course, there are better behaviors that you could do to win the game. You could go and try to gank for your mid laner. You could swap lanes with him. You could make sure to cover for him in team fights. There's all sorts of various things that are more important to do when one of your lanes is feeding, or when one of your lanes is doing bad. But the reality is that those things are simply a distraction from your most direct path to improving the skill that you set out to improve at the beginning of the game. So while they will make you better in a holistic sense, like if you apply it to 5,000 games and you say, I'm going to just practice the skills needed to win the game over and over again, yeah, you'll get there. You'll accumulate them. But the more effective and direct approach is to say, I'm going to train this skill till I'm good at it. I'm going to train it sequentially, and I'm going to do it in a series of games, regardless of whether or not I'm winning or losing, or my teammates are distracting me. So I would say you need to square away like your value of how much you're willing to lose a game in order to improve. Okay? That's the first step. Then I think that it is, if you can have in your head 3 different goals for 3 different phases of the game, it's a very good thing to be able to do that, because League of Legends is this weird game where there's 2 phases, right? There's the laning phase and then there's the post-laning phase. And it behooves you to have a training goal for each of those, because they play out very differently in the game and you need a different set of skills to succeed at both times. But if you do find a drill that runs linearly through the whole game, that's a great thing to start with to simplify your training. Things like communicating the jungler pathing with your jungler and communicating the opposing jungler's pathing with your team. That's something you can do the whole game. It's more important in the beginning, goes and fades a little bit, later on, once you have like more ward coverage and the jungler is going to be grouped mostly, and it's irrelevant whether they're ganking because you're not laning anymore. That kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that narrowing it down to a single goal is only possible in games like that are much more straightforward and less complex than League of Legends, that only have one phase, as it were. And in League of Legends, you might have to do two goals, and for that, it might help you to have a sort of reminder or timer that goes off at 10 minutes or 12 minutes, when I typically think that the first dragon play should be made. And if it's a team play, obviously, if you have a jungler that's going to solo it or duo it beforehand, like that's a different thing. But I think you're looking at coordinated playmaking in the mid game. I think it kicks off lightly at around 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, and then strongly around 15 minutes. So you could have a timer that goes off that reminds you to switch goals. Like, oh yeah, my late game goal, I'm clearly done with laning phase now. Let's focus on the other thing. And that might help you make that mental switch. All right, thanks for the question. Let's jump into the third question of the... Oh, come on. Of the headphones sticking on my chairs.
Hey Weldon, on a previous episode you mentioned something about Japanese calligraphy and how that tied into accurate mouse movements. I was wondering if you had any advice or sources that I could reference to learn how to implement that into my FPS gaming. Thank you.
Okay, so short answer is no, I don't. I'm sorry. And I wasn't saying that you should necessarily implement this into your FPS gaming. What I was saying was that this is a craft. Shodo, or Japanese calligraphy, is a craft where the accurate movement of a tip of the brush is the most important thing. And the way that they have learned throughout thousands of years of history to most accurately control the small tip of a brush is through gross motor movements. So this symbolizes that one of the reasons I see most high-level FPS players playing with low sensitivity is because utilizing the shoulder and the back structure as a way of controlling the mouse is much more accurate, ultimately, than just doing it with your wrist and the small movements or the small muscles associated in your forearm, associated with that movement in your forearm. So what I was saying was not that you should go and do Japanese calligraphy. What I was saying was that I believe that this displays that essentially this highlights this phenomenon. Okay, but if you are curious about Japanese calligraphy, it's called shodo, Shoudo, or maybe it's Shodou. Now I don't remember, but anyway. In English, it's mostly just written Shodo because we don't have the long vowels in English. And I did it for 2 years when I was living in Japan, on and off. Kind of had a calligraphy teacher, took a few lessons. Here's a piece that I pulled out for the stream. Beforehand, I couldn't find the one that I did at the house, but I did write this on my shirt for a big multi-high school athletic event when I was cheering on my team. I wonder if I can change the focus. I guess I'll make it as big as I can without changing the focus on my camera. But I wrote that with a big brush on my shirt. It means North, because I was a part of North High School. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add to that, dude. You could check out, I don't have any resources because I was in Japan, and I had a calligraphy, there was a calligraphy, they teach calligraphy in school, and there was a teacher at my school, and I was like, hey, I'm interested in this. And he showed me some stuff, and gave me some brushes, and I bought some books at the local Japanese bookstore, and was working on it. So I can't really tell you, go down to your local bookstore, which is Japanese, where all of and go to the calligraphy section and buy a calligraphy workbook, and then read it because it's all in Japanese, and I could read Japanese, and practice it. I'm not sure that advice is useful for you, and I can't be like, go down the hallway, or actually his desk was just 2 desks down from me, and chat with your high school's calligraphy teacher about which brush you should use. So that's also not helpful advice. So I don't really know how to help you, other than that. It's a fun hobby. I recommend it. And you can probably find tons of stuff on YouTube if you search Shodo. I know that there's a documentary I just found. Let's see if I can show. It's called Kazuaki Tanahashi, The Brush Mind, parentheses calligraphy. And it seems to be like a 50-minute documentary about this guy who does calligraphy. So maybe there's shots of calligraphy stuff in there and talking about calligraphy-ing, and could be interesting, could not be. I don't know. I've never looked at it, but I was hoping to answer your question, so I just searched Google and YouTube and said how to, and that is what popped up. Okay, let's jump into the last question of the show, everybody. Before we do, I want to talk about the Mac program. This is my online video training course, which is currently a 47 video series program on how to perform better in life. So whether this applies to your esport or your management is up to you, or your office management or your parenting or your friendships is up to you on how you choose to apply it. I put it in the context of esport because that is what I was and who I was developing it for. But the skill set you learn in order to be mentally resilient, in order to focus on your goals, and in order to not tilt and not choke is more or less the same. It involves a component of mindfulness, which we train in the program, which is to be aware of what is going on internally in your body so that you can then ignore it, more or less. Step 2, which is to accept what is going on internally in your body. Once you understand kind of the drivers that you have, to not fight them so much, essentially, because that tension leads to a lot of pain and also leads to a lot of incorrect behavior that detracts from our real goals. And then commitment, the third step, which is to actually then change your behavior or correct your behavior or modify your behavior to be in line with your values and then to follow through with it. So, how do you manifest motivation? I like to talk about a lot that motivation is simply an emotion, and you can take it or leave it. You can't tell when you're looking at somebody whether they're motivated or not. You can only see what they're doing. So we see people who are showing up on time to school every day, and we say, oh, that kid is motivated. Maybe he's not motivated at all. Maybe he's just showing up to school at time every day, even though he really is having a bad day and doesn't want to, but he does it anyway. He has no emotional motivation in his system, but he's fulfilling a set of values that he holds to, which he believes are his guiding principles to what he wants to accomplish in his life, and he's acting out those principles. So we, the world, declare him motivated. And so when people message me and they're like, how do I be motivated like that guy who goes to the gym, or that guy who shows up on time, or that guy who practices every day, or that girl who practices every day, or that girl who shows up on time, whatever. You have to realize that these people are not always experiencing the state of motivation, that a lot of times they're simply fulfilling values in long-term decision-making that they hold dear to and that they know will impact their life in the positive. And that is what commitment is all about. Refining those values, connecting them to your daily actions, and then following through on them despite not feeling motivation or feeling a counterintuitive or counter-useful, I guess, a useless internal state. Okay, last question, you guys, from Brandon.
Hey, Weldon. I recently started playing Battlerite about a week ago, and I'm having a blast. I want to start playing ranked soon, so I guess I just wanted your advice on what would be the fastest way to get over the learning curve so that I can start climbing the ladder. Thanks.
All right, I had a question very similar to this in my pre-stream or my pre-show chat. So for those of you who don't know, this show streams live on Twitch, twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon. And you can actually check out the show. Like I do Q&A with the audience before the show and after this show. And so you can check it out. It's more like an hour and a half show instead of this 30-minute show that I do for YouTube, twitch.tv/mindgamesweldon. And somebody asked a very similar question. And my answer was thus, that you should play the game mode that allows you to most creatively explore new combos and new ways of pushing your limits, and then you should always be pushing your limits. Here's a simple example from Pokemon Go. I was playing Pokemon Go and I was throwing the Pokeball like forward, and then I found out about curveballs, where like you spin the ball and then you throw it. And I was like, holy cow, there's no way I'll ever hit a Pokemon with a curveball. And I was like, unless it's the only thing I ever throw. And then I committed myself to taking the L. I withdrew my mind from the evaluation process. I withdrew my mind from judgment and from the idea of catching the Pokemon or not catching it, or wasting my Pokeball or not wasting it, or whatever. Like I just took away the gaming system from my brain, and I delved into, with curiosity and joy and play, the mindset of, oh, can I push my limits? Can I like throw only excellence and only curveballs every single time? And that's all I did. And what happened was I improved much more rapidly than if I was trying to like get better at it for the purposes of the game. So you need to find a way to not care about winning or losing and only care about creative freedom and pushing your limits to the extreme, because you're going to have a lot of limits early in the game and none of them are relevant, because like the thing is limiting. So there might be something, let's use a League of Legends rank ladder examples because I don't really know Battlerite all that well, but let's say you're like gold 4 and you're limited in terms of the skill set that you need to get to gold 3, and like you're afraid of pushing your limits because you're losing some games here and there because of it, and so you want to incrementally get better and get to gold 3 eventually. Well, that's really dumb, because gold 3 isn't that much better than gold 4, and what you really want to be is diamond. So you should be like, who cares about the results of these games? Whether I'm gold 3 or gold 4 or gold 5 or gold 2, like none of that matters. It's just small little variations of suck. So let me just play and with creative freedom tackle the limits of my potential and the barriers to what I can achieve and fail half the time. Because if you're right there at the limit of what you can do, half the time you're going to put one foot over the edge. And you're going to fail the trade or the encounter or the combo. And the other half the time you're going to pull it off. 50% failure rate is insanely high. Feels insanely high. Most people do not like to fail over and over again. In fact, this is one of the things that pro players in League of Legends are going and other esports are going to have when they re-enter the workforce. When they retire and re-enter the workforce, one of the things that they will have over people who took a more standard approach to life is that they had epic failures much more often and much more frequently and had to deal with them on a much more regular basis and therefore are much more mentally resilient than people who have been living a normal life. If you think about the times that you have walked onto a stage in front of 18,000 people and like taken the chance to make a play and then failed it and lost not only in front of those 18,000 people live, but also lost like $20,000. It's not going to be very many times in the last 10 years of your life. But for a League of Legends pro at the top, it might be 4 times in 2 years. Or heck, for me, it was 2 times in 2 years, but for the teams that we beat, it was like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 times in a few years. And the way that you cope with that kind of stress and that kind of limit breaking is by gaining mental resilience and gaining strength. So if you can find a way to creatively tackle the game in a way that you don't care about ranked and throw yourself into it anyway, you'll be able to like essentially keep pushing your limits and progressing very quickly. All right, that's my answer. Hope it was helpful. Make sure to check out the Mac program. I forgot to say that you should go to mindgames.gg/MAC and use the code AskWeldon to get your $5 discount. And that if you are not interested in the program after you try it out, that's fine. Just email me and say, hey, not my cup of tea, and I send you your money back, because the goal is not to collect your money. The goal is to have successful users within the program. Because pretty soon I'm going to bring you all into the beta test for my new app, and I want people who actually are interested in what we're doing here. All right, thanks guys for the show, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.